Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us for the second part of our story. Let's jump right back in. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as the most scandalous divorce case in Connecticut's recent history began. Sarah Hayes sat at the defendant's table with her court-appointed attorney. Marcus Thorne, facing federal charges, sat in shackles at a separate table. But the real shock came when Judge William Morrison called the court to order and Ethan Hayes walked through the courtroom doors. Gone was the suburban businessman persona. Ethan wore a perfectly tailored black suit, and behind him walked a legal team that made Marcus's former associates look like amateurs. Leading them was Victoria Cross, one of the most feared family law attorneys on the East Coast. Your Honor, Victoria announced. We're here to respond to the divorce petition filed by Mrs. Hayes and to present our counterpetition for divorce on grounds of adultery, fraud, and conspiracy. Sarah's attorney looked overwhelmed as boxes of evidence were wheeled into the courtroom. This wasn't the slam-dunk case Marcus had promised her. But the real surprise was yet to come. Before we proceed, I need to address an extraordinary situation, Judge Morrison announced. Mr. Hayes, would you please approach the bench? Ethan stood and walked forward with military precision. Colonel Hayes, Judge Morrison said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Thank you for your service to our country. Your security clearance has been verified by the appropriate authorities. The title hung in the air like a thunderbolt. Colonel, not the mysterious businessman Sarah had tried to portray as unstable, but a military officer with the highest security clearances. Marcus's face went white as he began to understand exactly who he had tried to destroy. Sarah stared in shock. In 18 years of marriage, she had never known her husband's true rank or the nature of his service. Victoria Cross smiled as she opened her first file. Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence of Mrs. Hayes' conspiracy with Mr. Thorne to defraud the court and manufacture false evidence against my client. The evidence was devastating. Audio recordings of Sarah and Marcus planning to lie under oath, video surveillance of their meetings with a corrupt psychologist, and, most damning, Sarah's own voice describing how they would manipulate Lily into testifying against her father. In this recording, Victoria announced, playing audio through the courtroom speakers, we hear Mrs. Hayes and Mr. Thorne discussing how to coach the minor child to make false statements about her father's behavior. Sarah's voice filled the courtroom. Lily trusts her father completely, so will need to be subtle. Maybe suggest that his work makes him dangerous. Plant some doubts about his activities. Marcus's voice followed. Children are easily manipulated. A few leading questions, some suggestions about what real fathers are like, and she'll start seeing him differently. The words hung in the air like poison. Sarah had been willing to psychologically manipulate her own daughter to win a custody battle. Lily, now 17 and sitting in the gallery, listened to her mother's betrayal with tears streaming down her face. The woman she had loved and trusted had been prepared to destroy her relationship with her father for money. But Ethan wasn't finished. Victoria Cross presented evidence of Sarah's attempts to hide marital assets and her coordination with Marcus to defraud the court. Mrs. Hayes wasn't an innocent victim, Victoria stated. She was a willing co-conspirator who understood exactly what kind of man she was partnering with. The trial continued for 3 days, each session bringing new revelations about the depth of their conspiracy. On the final day, Ethan himself took the stand. His testimony was precise, controlled, and devastating. I love my wife, he said simply. I trusted her with my life, my secrets, and, most importantly, our daughter. Her betrayal wasn't just personal. It was an attack on the most fundamental bonds of family and loyalty. Mr. Hayes, Sarah's attorney asked, isn't it possible that your wife simply fell out of love and wanted a different life? Ethan's eyes fixed on the lawyer with a cold stare that had once intimidated international terrorists. Falling out of love doesn't require destroying another person. It doesn't require lying under oath or manipulating a child. There are honorable ways to end a marriage. This wasn't one of them. When the judge finally rendered his decision, it was swift and merciless. Sarah would receive no alimony, no marital assets, and no custody rights. Furthermore, she would face criminal charges for perjury and conspiracy. Marcus received an additional 10 years on his federal sentence. As the courtroom emptied, Sarah approached Ethan one final time. Please, she whispered. I made a mistake. I was stupid and selfish, but I'm still Lily's mother. Ethan looked at the woman who had once been the center of his world and felt nothing but cold indifference. You stopped being her mother the moment you decided to use her as a weapon against me. Some betrayals can't be forgiven, Sarah. Some choices can't be undone. The war was over. The predators had been destroyed. But for Ethan Hayes, the reckoning was just beginning. 6 months after the trial, Ethan Hayes sat in his home office reviewing files. The systematic destruction of Marcus Thorne's criminal network had revealed a web of corruption spanning 3 states. Federal prosecutors had filed charges against 17 additional defendants, including 2 judges, 5 lawyers and 7 mental health professionals, 43 divorces, 28 custody battles, and millions of dollars in stolen assets. But for Ethan, the statistics were meaningless. What mattered was that the predators who had threatened his family were facing justice, and that other families would be protected. Lily had grown stronger through the ordeal, though her mother's betrayal had left deep scars. Now 17, and preparing for college, she had chosen to legally change her name. She would be Lily Hayes exclusively, carrying only her father's name. "Dad, there's something I need to tell you," Lily said one evening as they shared dinner. "Mom tried to contact me last week." Ethan set down his fork. What did she want? "She's getting out of prison next month. She wants to meet to explain everything and ask for forgiveness." Lily's voice was steady, but Ethan could see the pain in her eyes. "She said she's changed, that she's gotten therapy and understands how wrong she was." "What did you tell her?" "Nothing. I didn't respond, but I wanted to ask you something. Do you think people can really change? Do you think she deserves a chance to make amends?" Ethan considered his answer carefully. "Some people can change," he said slowly. "But there's a difference between making a mistake and making a choice to hurt people you're supposed to protect." "You mean the difference between accidentally hurting someone and intentionally betraying them?" "Exactly. Your mother didn't accidentally have an affair. She didn't accidentally conspire to fabricate evidence against me. Those were deliberate choices made over months. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself, not for the person who hurt you. It's about letting go of anger so it doesn't poison your own life. But forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. You can forgive someone while still protecting yourself from their ability to hurt you again." "So, you're saying I could forgive Mom without letting her back in my life?" "I'm saying that whatever you decide about your relationship with your mother is entirely your choice. I won't influence you either way, but I will say this. If you choose to have contact with her, it should be on your terms, at your pace, and with clear boundaries." That night, Lily wrote a letter to her mother. It was a carefully crafted message that demonstrated the maturity forced upon her by her mother's betrayal. "Mom, I received your messages asking to meet. I've thought about it carefully, and I'm not ready for that conversation. You didn't just hurt Dad, you hurt me. You were willing to destroy my relationship with my father to get what you wanted. I don't hate you, but I don't trust you either. Trust has to be earned, and earning it takes time and consistent actions. Maybe someday I'll be ready to hear what you have to say. But that day isn't today, and it might not be for a long time. In the meantime, I'm building a life based on honesty, loyalty, and the values Dad taught me. If you really have changed, then you'll respect my decision and give me the space I need to heal." Meanwhile, the ripple effects of Marcus's downfall continued to spread. Maria Thorne, his ex-wife, had used her settlement from the civil lawsuit to start a foundation that helped other victims of predatory divorce attorneys. 3 documentary filmmakers had approached Ethan about telling his story, but he had declined. His victory was personal, not public. He did, however, accept an invitation to speak at a closed session for family court judges about recognizing and preventing manipulation tactics. His presentation led to new protocols for investigating suspicious patterns in divorce proceedings. Dr. Susan Mills, Lily's former school psychologist, also reached out. She was developing training materials for school counselors to help them identify when children were being coached to make false allegations. "Your daughter's intelligence and emotional stability probably saved her from being successfully manipulated," Dr. Mills told Ethan. The comment reminded Ethan of something Marcus had said during one of their recorded conversations. Children are easily manipulated. It was a predator's mindset, viewing a child's trust as a weakness to be exploited rather than a bond to be protected. As the first anniversary of his divorce approached, Ethan reflected on the choices that had led to this point. He had used skills learned in warfare to protect his family. And while the methods had been ruthless, the cause had been just. Sarah was scheduled for release from prison in 3 weeks. Marcus would remain incarcerated for another 8 years. The predators had been destroyed, but Ethan remained vigilant. In his world, threats could emerge from anywhere, and the most dangerous ones often came from those closest to you. He had learned to trust carefully and forgive never. It was a hard lesson, but it had saved his family. Sarah Hayes was released from the Danbury Federal Correctional Institution on a cold Tuesday morning in November, 18 months after her arrest. The scandal had faded from public consciousness. She emerged from prison with nothing but a small bag of personal belongings and a bus ticket to a halfway house in Hartford. What Sarah didn't know was that her every move was being monitored. Ethan had maintained surveillance on all of Marcus's co-conspirators, and Sarah was no exception. He wanted to ensure she posed no threat to Lily's peace of mind. For 3 weeks, Sarah followed the strict guidelines of her parole. She attended mandated counseling, worked part-time at a nonprofit, and lived quietly. To outside observers, she appeared to be a woman genuinely trying to rebuild her life. But Ethan's surveillance revealed a different truth. Sarah was carefully rebuilding her network, reconnecting with old friends, and working toward a specific goal, regaining contact with Lily. The first attempt was subtle. She contacted Lily's high school, claiming to be updating her emergency contact information. When that failed, she tried reaching out through Lily's friends on social media. Each attempt was documented, each failure adding to Sarah's growing desperation. The breaking point came on a Saturday afternoon in December. Lily was shopping at the mall with friends when Sarah simply appeared beside her at a cosmetics counter. "Lily, sweetheart," Sarah said softly, her voice trembling. "I've missed you so much." Lily froze. Sarah looked older, thinner, and there was a brittle quality to her appearance that spoke of desperation. "I wrote you letters," Sarah continued, moving closer despite Lily's obvious discomfort. "I know you probably didn't read them, but I've changed. I've had time to think about what I did, and I understand now how wrong I was. Please leave me alone," Lily said quietly, her voice steady. "I'm your mother," Sarah said, tears beginning to flow. "I made terrible mistakes, but I'm still your mother. Doesn't that mean anything?" Several shoppers stopped to watch the drama. "You stopped being my mother when you decided to use me as a weapon against Dad," Lily replied, her voice carrying the steel that Ethan recognized as his own. "You were willing to manipulate me into lying under oath." Sarah's composure cracked. "I was confused, manipulated by Marcus. I wasn't thinking clearly." "You were thinking clearly enough to record practice sessions where you rehearsed lies about Dad. You were thinking clearly enough to meet with that psychologist and plan exactly what you wanted me to say." Lily's voice remained steady. "I heard the recordings, Mom. I heard you laughing about how easy it would be to turn me against him." What Sarah had planned as an emotional ambush designed to guilt Lily into reconciliation was instead revealing her desperation. "I can change," Sarah whispered. "I have changed. I just need a chance to prove it to you." "No," Lily said simply. "You had 18 years to be my mother. You chose to throw that away for money and a man who was using you just like he used all his other victims. Some choices have permanent consequences." Security guards began approaching. Sarah had one last card to play. "Your father has poisoned you against me," she said, her voice turning bitter. "He's filled your head with lies and turned you into a weapon against your own mother." "Stop!" Lily's voice cut through Sarah's words like a blade. "Dad never said a single negative word about you. Not once. Even after everything you did, he told me that whatever I decided about our relationship was my choice. He protected me from the truth about what you really are." Sarah stared at her daughter, seeing a young woman who had inherited her father's strength and moral clarity. "But I will tell you what Dad never would," Lily continued. "You're not a victim. You're a predator who was willing to sacrifice your own child for money. And predators don't change. They just get better at hiding what they are." Security escorted Sarah from the mall. Lily's friends surrounded her with support, but she felt surprisingly calm. The confrontation she had dreaded for months was over, and she had discovered something important about herself. She was stronger than her mother's betrayal. That evening, she told Ethan about the encounter. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Actually, yes," Lily said, sounding surprised. "I thought seeing her would be harder, but it wasn't. She looked so small, desperate. I almost felt sorry for her. Until she tried to blame you. That's when I realized she still thinks she's the victim." Ethan nodded slowly. "She got the answer she needed to hear. But if she violates her parole by continuing to harass you, there will be consequences." The threat was quietly delivered but absolutely serious. Sarah had been warned away from his daughter. If she chose to ignore those warnings, Ethan would respond with the same ruthless efficiency he had used to destroy Marcus's criminal enterprise. Spring arrived in Connecticut, and Lily Hayes was preparing for her high school graduation when Sarah made her final, fatal mistake. Unable to accept her daughter's rejection and desperate to salvage some connection to her former life, Sarah had been escalating her attempts at contact. She sent gifts that were returned unopened, hired a private investigator to photograph Lily, and, in an act of pure desperation, appeared at Lily's graduation ceremony. Ethan spotted Sarah immediately as she tried to blend into the crowd. "Dad?" Lily whispered, having noticed her mother's presence as well. "What should I do?" "Nothing," Ethan replied calmly. "Enjoy your graduation. Don't let her steal this moment from you." But Sarah had no intention of remaining a passive observer. As Lily walked across the stage to receive her diploma, Sarah stood and began applauding loudly, calling out, "That's my daughter!" The disruption was brief but effective. Hundreds of heads turned towards Sarah, and several people began recording the scene. Lily's moment of triumph was being hijacked by her mother's desperate need for attention. Security moved to escort Sarah from the venue, but the damage was done. The confrontation made local news as convicted felon disrupts daughter's graduation. For Lily, seeing her private pain turned into public entertainment was the final straw. That evening, she made a decision that would end Sarah's harassment permanently. "I want to file a restraining order," Lily told Ethan, "and I want her to know that any future contact will result in criminal charges." Ethan helped his daughter navigate the legal process, but he also took additional steps. He ensured that Sarah's parole officer was fully briefed on her violations and that her continued harassment was documented in federal databases. What Sarah didn't know was that her disruption at graduation had been filmed from multiple angles. Combined with security footage from the mall and evidence of her hiring a private investigator, federal prosecutors had sufficient grounds to revoke her parole. 3 days after graduation, Sarah was arrested at her halfway house. She would serve the remainder of her original sentence, 18 months. Even facing a return to prison, Sarah remained delusional about her victim status. In a final interview with local media, she portrayed herself as a mother being cruelly separated from her child by a vindictive ex-husband. "He's turned her against me," Sarah told the reporter, tears flowing. "I've paid for my mistakes. How long does a mother have to suffer for loving her child?" The interview aired once and was immediately buried by the station's legal team after Ethan's attorneys pointed out its defamatory nature. More importantly, the interview demonstrated that Sarah had learned nothing. Lily watched the interview and felt something shift inside her. The last vestiges of daughterly love finally died. "I'm done," Lily told Ethan, "not just with her contact attempts or her manipulation. I'm done feeling guilty about not wanting a relationship with her. I'm done being sad about losing the mother I thought I had." Ethan recognized the moment for what it was. His daughter had finally completed the journey from victim to survivor. The betrayal that had once threatened to destroy their family had instead forged her into someone stronger and more self-aware. The final chapter of Sarah's story played out without drama. She served her additional prison time quietly, her dreams of reconciliation with Lily finally abandoned. Upon her release, she moved to Florida, working at a chain restaurant and living in a small apartment far from the privileged life she had once enjoyed. Marcus Thorne died in federal prison during his 7th year of incarceration, the victim of violence from other inmates. Dr. Steinberg lost his license permanently and worked as a night shift security guard. Judge Thornan was disbarred and sentenced to 5 years in prison. The network of corruption that had enabled Marcus's predatory scheme was systematically dismantled. For the victims, justice was finally served. Maria Thorne's foundation had helped recover millions of dollars and provided support for families destroyed by predatory lawyers. New protocols in family courts made it significantly harder for corrupt attorneys to manipulate the system. But for Ethan Hayes, the true victory was simpler and more personal. On a warm evening in June, he sat on his porch watching Lily pack for college. Her future was bright with possibility because she had learned the difference between love and manipulation, between loyalty and betrayal. She was heading to Stanford with a full scholarship, planning to study psychology to help children who had been manipulated by predatory adults. The trauma that had once threatened to destroy her had instead given her a mission and a strength that would serve her throughout her life. "Any regrets?" Lily asked her father as she carried boxes to his car. Ethan considered the question seriously. The methods he had used to destroy Sarah and Marcus had been ruthless and unforgiving. He had shown no mercy, and he never would. "None," he said simply. "Some people mistake mercy for weakness and forgiveness for invitation. Your mother and Marcus learned that some betrayals have permanent consequences." "Good," Lily replied, her voice carrying the same steel that had made her father legendary in his previous profession. "Because what they did was unforgivable." As they drove toward Lily's future, Ethan reflected on the lessons learned. Trust was a gift to be given carefully. Loyalty was the foundation of all meaningful relationships. And sometimes the greatest act of love was the complete destruction of those who threatened the people you were sworn to protect. The predators had been eliminated, justice had been served, and the bonds between a father and daughter had been forged stronger than steel in the fires of betrayal and survival. In the end, that was all that mattered. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.